I'm reading this very short article by Rudolf Steiner this morning called The Scientific Method of Anthroposophy. And although it is short, it does contain some very important points, and I just want to highlight a little bit of what he's talking about here. So, the main idea of this article, he's of course writing in the early 20th century, and he's talking about, well, just some of his main points I just have highlighted here. He's talking about the current dominance of scientific materialism, that is, the view that the only thing that is real, or at the very least, the only thing that is worth studying and talking about that we can grasp, is the material realm. So it's what in the philosophy of science actually is called the demarcation problem. And what that refers to, the demarcation is between what can be included within scientific method and what has to be excluded, either because it's a type of knowledge that is outside of the human capacity for knowing, or it's just into a realm which raises skeptical questions as to whether we have objective access to such areas. So let me just, as I say, highlight a few of his main points here. He's putting the context, as I say, into this current dominance of scientific materialism, where the only access to true knowledge is what can be delivered through the senses. In other words, anything which perhaps is attributed to a faculty of intuition has to be discarded in that scientific materialism. And the main point he makes as you go through the article, it's not that anthroposophy and material science are separate and have to be, kept at odds with each other, but in fact, when you really understand the scientific methodology behind them, that one is really an expansion of the other. In other words, if you look at the very methodology in material science and the very basis of it, you can further expand that into where anthroposophy goes in the study of non-material things. As he says here, I'll just read this excerpt. Anthroposophy seeks not to destroy the foundations of material science, such as physics and chemistry, but to expand these foundations into realms capable of studying life, soul, and spirit. And of course, the study of life is the most essential thing in the healthcare sciences. The final, yeah, well, actually, let me go to the original article. I just want to read a few of the excerpts from near the end of the article. Towards the end here, he says, "At the present time, our manner of observing the physical and chemical is based upon a particular constitution of the human soul, and scientific certainty is not the result of something revealed by nature, but of an inner experience of observation. What is experienced by the soul while observing nature gives certainty. Anthroposophical knowledge advances from this to other soul experiences which may be ours if thinking, trained in physical and chemical science, has transformed itself and acquired the faculty of imaginative, inspirative, and intuitive perception. And the latter exercises of the soul the latter experiences of the soul permit a similar certainty to gleam forth." So that's just what I was mentioning earlier, is this whole transformation of the scientific method into other realms, which may normally not believed to be true. And then coming to the final paragraph, a couple of excerpts here, he says, "It is even obliged to credit materialism with the development of that mode of human perception which leads to sound judgment in the sphere of the non-living. But it is likewise obliged to consider it impossible for this mode of perception to establish anything but physics and chemistry. But whoever takes pains to make clear to himself how such a mode of perception comes into being can see that, with the same inner certainty, other modes are possible, those for the regions of life, soul, and spirit." So again, he's repeating this idea of taking science and its methodology outside of pure material considerations into other realms of study, such as life, soul, and spirit. And the final excerpt, the final actually statement in this article, he says, "For to him, the metamorphosis of sensuous and intellectual knowledge into the forms of imagination, inspiration, and intuition is nothing but an advancement of the child's form to that of the adult. The same forces are active in the adult as in the child. The same scientific method is employed in the knowledge of life, soul, and spirit as in physics and chemistry. So, in other words, his main conclusion, the main idea in this piece, is not that the method of material science and the method of anthroposophical science have to be completely separate and kept apart from each other, but that one follows from the other. And the way he puts it here, in fact, that the anthroposophical method of science is a development and expansion of the material mode of science, and it leads to broader realms of study and broader realms of conclusions that can be brought from that form of science.